So Ferrari have just revealed their brand new electric car, their first ever electric car, the Luce, and the reception so far hasn't been positive to say the least. There are a lot of angry Ferrari fans and just automotive fans in general, mainly because the car looks nothing like a Ferrari in the past. So in this video, I'll break down the design of the exterior, the interior as well, which has been received a little bit more positively, as well as what it means for the Ferrari brand, and also maybe the entire industry as a whole. So it is their first electric car, but it's also their first five-seater as well. So we do have the Purosangue SUV, which I think seats 4 people with a captain's chair layout, but this seats 5 people. It's a little bit more spacious, mainly because of that electric platform, which means you don't need an engine, of course, and you can maximize the space in between the wheels a lot better. It is designed not only by Ferrari, but primarily loved from. So that's ex-Apple designer Johnny Ive's design company, along with Mark Newson. But they did consult with Ferrari's head designer, Flavio Manzoni, as well. So that is partly why it doesn't look anything like a Ferrari in the past, but it was also a deliberate philosophy change by Ferrari for this specific vehicle. I think they knew that going into a totally new category for them, an electric vehicle, didn't really matter what they would release. There would be some backlash. So they probably saw it as a calculated risk to switch things up a little bit. If they created a supercar that was just powered by batteries, then I think people would just go for the V12 supercar, the 12 cilindri, or they would just go for the V8s or V6s. So I think they said, okay, we're going to make an electric car. Let's do something completely different. Let's try and access a category that's different, which is more that SUV family type vehicle for the 1%ers, essentially. They have taken a risk and they knew they were taking a risk. I don't think they completely lost their minds. I think they knew this was going to be received differently anyway, so they may as well try and think outside the box a little bit. In terms of performance, it's of course got the power and the performance you'd expect from a Ferrari. So 772 kilowatts, 0 to 102.5 seconds. Maybe 5 years ago, it would have been accepted as something that's incredible performance, but now it's just to be expected, especially with an electric car. I think you've got brands that are delivering this kind of performance at a small fraction of what this will cost. But I think Ferrari are not just banking on these raw numbers here, not just the top speed, not just the power or 0 to 100, but how the car feels to drive and how it would fare on a track as well. In terms of range, you're going to get 530 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, which is not too bad, actually. It is a huge battery pack, so it is a 122 kilowatt hour battery pack. I think the fact that they've tried to maybe skew it more towards performance than range means that you're not going to get that ideal range that you want. Having said that, it is very aerodynamic and has been designed that way to ensure that there is that balance between performance and range too. DC fast charging up to 350 kilowatts as well. It's of course got an 800 volt platform, which is pretty much table stakes for any relatively premium electric car that is released these days. And in terms of the motors, it's actually got one on each of the 4 wheels. So it's a quad motor setup. Each have their own track and regeneration actuator coordinated by a vehicle control unit. So that just means that you can shift power between the wheels as needed to ensure that it performs as well as it can around the track. It's also got a torque shift system. So instead of the pedals shifting up and down gears that you would be used to in a regular performance Ferrari, they've got different roles. So the right pedal actually shifts the amount of torque. So this helps with corner balance, mid-corner, your corner entry speed and your exit as well. And then also you've got your left pedal, which is controlling the amount of regen braking. So that's actually a little bit more similar to what we've seen in other electric cars that still have a pedal as well. In terms of weight distribution, it's 2.2 tons, 47-53 front rear distribution there. And the center of gravity is actually 95 millimeters lower than the Purosangue. This should of course help with handling as well, especially around track, if people are actually going to be using this around track, because I think this could end up being people's second or third Ferrari or car that's more maybe family oriented when they've already got a bunch of different supercars in their stables. And then moving on to the positioning of this car. So the price starts at an eye-watering $640,000 USD, which I think is probably not going to be what most of these cars are actually going to cost, given the amount of options that you can probably spec, which would take the price up to near $1 million USD there. You've got other vehicles that aren't really direct competitors, but sort of occupy in a similar space. So the Rolls-Royce Spectre, which is probably a little more designed towards GT and comfort rather than outright performance, $468,000. And then you've got a bunch of cars that are more sedan-like underneath. So you've got the Lucid Air Sapphire, the Porsche Taycan Turbo GT, and then the Mercedes EQS AMG as well, which are all around the $200,000 mark there. The Lucid Air Sapphire has the most power out of all these vehicles, with the Taycan Turbo GT being the most similar in terms of power to the Ferrari Luce. But really, it sits probably in between a sedan and SUV, and there's no real direct competitor for it just there. I think if Lamborghini still had its plans for its electric vehicle, which it shelved, then they might have had a direct competition just there. But as it stands, it's probably got a space all to its own. So I think a lot of its competitors are going to be keeping a key eye on things to see if this is a success or not. By all reports, pre-orders are going well despite the negative reaction so far. So let's wait and see what happens there. Let's move on to the designer, which of course has been extremely controversial. Starting off with the exterior here, I actually think the shape is probably the most controversial part. It has a little bit of that bubbly, even like a computer mouse type shape rather than your traditional Ferrari coupe supercar, mid-engine supercar, or even the mid-front engine supercar. Those kind of proportions which people are used to. Even the Purosangue has a little bit more of a traditional SUV layout. People aren't as used to this kind of look, which is made possible because of the electric architecture, and probably means that the space inside is a lot better than it would be otherwise. But in terms of the details itself, obviously, I think it is different. It is futuristic, but some of this detailing does seem similar to Ferraris of the past. I think this kind of blacked out section here with these LED daytime running lights evokes a little bit of the Ferraris in the 1980s, so something like the 308 GTB or in the 288 GTO, which seems like sacrilege comparing electric cars to those legendary vehicles. But I do feel that the framing, that kind of low set front end with the blacked out section, does have some sort of similarities there. Overall, I think even the front end here with these active aero shutters as well is very, very clean. It's very cohesive as well. The philosophy behind this car was that it was meant to look like the glass shell was designed first and then the body was dropped on top of it. And you can see that with the layering here. You've got that glass shell or that greenhouse just kind of sitting there, and then this blue body sitting on top of it. It's an interesting look for sure. I don't think it looks bad. Perhaps it doesn't look Ferrari, and that's why people are just a little bit confused about it. But I do think it will grow on people. If the proportions were a little bit more traditional, and we'll see a little bit later on how that could look like, it would be much more well received. It is very, very clean and cohesive, and that's not something you can say with a lot of cars that are coming out these days. I do love these wheels as well. So this is a classic 5-spoke design that looks a lot like the Ferraris of the 1990s, thinking like the Ferrari 360, for example, even the 355. I think they all had probably similar wheel designs at some point. And rather than having something a little bit more complicated, I think a classic 5-spoke design always works on most cars here. Clean side profile as well. Basically no harsh lines or no kind of prominent shoulder lines here at all. The door handles are neatly integrated into the doors here. It's not those flush door handles, which are being banned in China already and might not be used as much in the near future as well. But yeah, I think the side profile, it's definitely designed for aerodynamics. It doesn't have that powerful aspect to the side profile that we're used to seeing from Ferraris, especially around these rear haunches where we're used to seeing these flared arches really accentuate the power of the car. But here it's probably a little bit weaker. Yeah, I don't think it looks too bad, just unexpected for Ferrari. Here as well, you've got a blacked out section, which looks like a traditional air vent that you've seen on the combustion engine cars. Maybe it looks a little bit out of place here, but I do believe it is functional, which is nice to see. In terms of the rear end, this very much looks like a Ferrari. We've seen this quad tail lamp layout in a lot of different Ferraris. This specifically looks like something from the 90s with the Ferrari 360, Modena especially. I think it's a little bit of a strange treatment with the way it's framed here. It's mainly because of that philosophy where it looks like the body is dropped on the glass, but otherwise it looks a little bit squared off, a little bit blocky, rather than something that flows a lot nicely and is a lot more shapely that we're used to seeing from Ferraris. The bottom half of this rear end as well is quite absent of any kind of detailing like diffusers or exhausts or anything that we're used to seeing, so it looks quite plain in comparison. But I do think they've been brave here and said, look, it's an electric car, we're not going to put any superfluous elements here that try and make it look like a combustion engine car. So for that, I applaud them. It is interesting though that the flagship color is this baby blue. Traditionally they've led with this Ferrari red, which I do think it looks better in. I think Ferraris always look better in red, of course, but this might have been a deliberate move, given this is an electric car. Blue and electric probably has some sort of association more so than red. They've tried to do something a little bit different, not only with the car, but also with the color they've come out with as well. There is an alternative design as well, which I think probably is the most controversial. This wheel is probably the more aerodynamic wheel, where a lot of the wheel is closed off to ensure smoother airflow. It looks Italian, I will give them that, but it doesn't necessarily look sporty, or it doesn't necessarily have the flair that we expect to come from Ferrari. It probably looks like something that suits better on a Fiat. But I think luckily this is an option. This isn't something that you have to have. I do think more people will go for the 5-spoke option or any other kind of more traditional looking wheel if they had the choice as well. So my thoughts are that it's not the worst looking car. Is it a Ferrari? I think in terms of what we think of Ferrari now, definitely not. But over time, I think it will grow on people. And I think Johnny Ive and the team have done a good job in creating something cohesive and something that stands out. It's got people talking at the very least. So we'll see if Ferrari walk back their ways, if they ever build a replacement for this. But for now, they tried something different. They tried to break the mold of what people think a Ferrari is. And I do think this will be quite influential as well. I think we will see a lot of copies come out, especially out of China, at a much lower price, of course. We've seen already a lot of Chinese vehicles are copying the Porsche Cayennes, the Land Rovers, the Range Rovers. That kind of design has been copied countless number of times across a number of vehicles. And I do think this is something a little bit different. And given the prestige the Ferrari brand has and how much people clearly still care about it, given the backlash, I do think some other manufacturers will start to copy this. And it will probably make the design a little normalized as we see more kind of similar versions of it running around. All right, moving on to the interior now. This is something that is completely different for Ferraris compared to the recent past. So Ferraris in the last, say, 5 to 10 years have really gone heavy on touch buttons, screens everywhere. They were probably the first major manufacturer to start with the passenger side display, which now many cars are starting to adopt as well. But this is probably a return to form for the brand in terms of their interior. They brought back premium materials everywhere, tangible buttons and switches and interaction methods that make it feel a little bit more of a theatrical experience rather than just interacting with it on screen here and there. So this has been a deliberate decision by Johnny Ive and the team to create something that's probably a little bit more timeless. We've seen Bugatti try and do something similar with the Tourbillon as well, where they know it's a timeless vehicle and they don't want to litter it with screens that are going to get outdated unnecessarily. So here with the interior, you've got this steering wheel, which is very different. It looks like something from the 1990s or even 1980s, but it's still got the technology that we come to expect from a modern car. So things like controlling the drive modes with the Manetina switch are now in this little module here. You can change a bunch of other settings here as well, control things like the windscreen wipers, lights, anything else that was previously probably living on a stalk. And then you've got the indicators, which for a long time now, probably since the Ferrari 458, have been sitting on the steering wheel. But here it looks like it's a little bit more integrated and a little bit more nicer to touch as well. The gauge cluster is really interesting. So these are 3 screens that are sitting within these pinnacles, but it looks a little bit more retro, almost like a traditional dial again, rather than just one big screen. Again, to create a little bit more of an experience and make it feel more like a Ferrari, even if they're trying to not be like a Ferrari in some ways as well. The screen here is very interesting. So it does look like a mini iPad in some ways, but it is sitting on this little handle here, which you can rest your palm on and adjust to your liking, depending on if you're the passenger or if you're the driver as well, and be able to interact with it accordingly. You've got another little screen here for a clock too. And then you've got these lovely toggles as well, which have a really nice animation when you click them to adjust things like the fan speed, the air conditioning controls as well. So overall here, it is a very nicely designed interior. When I first saw it, I thought it looked a little bit odd. It looked a little bit van-like in some ways. It feels a bit modular with how it's been pieced together, not super cohesive. But as you see videos of it, it does look like it's a really nice way to interact with an interior, and something that we probably need to see more of, especially in these luxury high-end vehicles where a lot of these cheaper mainstream brands are basically doing as well, if not better, than a lot of these brands in terms of just screen technology. So you have to try and find a point of differentiation. And I think that is in tactile materials and luxury materials that are otherwise difficult to incorporate in a cheaper car. Things like the launch control, which in a regular car could take 5-6 buttons to try and configure before you can step on the accelerator pedal. But here you've got a nice roof-mounted launch procedure, which you pull almost like you're in an airplane. And that really creates that sense of atmosphere and theatrics that probably aren't as much there compared to other Ferrari cars, given that it is an electric vehicle. Having said that, there is an artificial sound or sound that comes from the electric motor's vibrations that have been pumped into the cabin, which does seem okay. Obviously not close to a Ferrari V12 or V8, but it is something. So they have tried to create some sort of kind of emotion or feeling within the car. There is footage as well of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton of the Ferrari F1 team driving the car. The footage of them looks like they are having fun. They are enjoying it. So it probably is a blast to drive. I don't think Ferrari would have signed off on such a vehicle if even with the electric powertrain, it wasn't able to live up to their very, very lofty standards of a driving experience. So I think they will have done quite well with how the car feels and does drive, both day to day and also on a track. And they've tried to do their best with the interior as well to create an experience that is not only luxurious, but also feels expensive and feels like you're part of more than just a car, but you're part of a Ferrari. So with this interior, I'm very hopeful that we will start to see a lot more brands try and copy some elements of it, usage of real materials, try and create that connection between physical switches and the digital interface. I think the more we see of that, the better it is for us as consumers, especially lower down the chain. So that's the exterior and interior, obviously controversial in a lot of ways, but as I've said, I think there is a lot of good to the car, and I do think in some ways we will get used to it and a lot of the design decisions will grow on us. But as an alternative look, I want to compare it to a set of renders created by Sugar Design, who's a very talented designer on Instagram. So he's created a bunch of designs which are still using the same philosophy as the Luce. So there are, of course, a bunch of renders floating around which completely redesign the car, use AI to make it look like a traditional Ferrari. But I do like that he has still tried to keep a lot of what Johnny Ive and the team have tried to achieve with the graphics, especially. So the front end still has the same sort of headlamp setup, but the proportions are just far more in line with what we expect a Ferrari to be. So it's got that real kind of classic mid-engine supercar feel that you see in the likes of the 458 lineage. I still think there's a lot of good in this car. This rear end is beautiful as well. There's two tail lamps at either end are just classic Ferrari and look fantastic. I think just lowering the roof line a little, adding these strong rear haunches here, similar to the 296 DTB, really give it a lot more character. But you could say probably this isn't what Ferrari were trying to achieve. They wanted to go after a different market. They wanted to create something that was maybe a little bit more roomier. I had room for 5 people, create a point of differentiation, which they wouldn't have dared to with a combustion engine car. This probably would have been received a lot better, but would someone go for a supercar that is electric, or would they go for a V6 or V8 or their V12 powered cars instead? So that's the Ferrari Luce. A lot of interesting elements to the car. I'm sure not all of you are thrilled of it, but I'm keen to hear what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this will eventually grow on you? Do Do you think this is a huge misstep? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe for more content just like this.